Well, we heard from a number of business leaders at our Yahoo Finance Invest conference this week. And one of the big topics was banking regulations. Our very own Brian Sozzi spoke with the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan, about just that. Take a listen.
Drilling into this topic, these topics a little more, we've heard a real sense of optimism from the folks on this stage. You know, my first interview of the morning was with Apollo CEO Mark Rowan. Optimism on this new administration, what they can do in terms of regulation, unleashing the power of business. Do you share that optimism?
Well, I think it's clear that the market has moved in anticipation of all that. Now it has to be executed upon. But I think what's really driving the fundamental activity in the economy is the things that make America great. Capitalism, a consumer knows how to, is employed and earning money and spending, a credit which is widely available. And, those are what drives this. Capital markets is deep and open and recycling capital, and investors like all the people here putting it to work. That's what makes America great, and having a set of policies which enhance that is a good thing.
Do these regulations get scrapped, Basel III?
I don't know what will happen. They're already being amended and stuff, and so I think cooler heads will prevail. We'll see what happens. But I think our job as an industry is to make sure that we do it in a way that is fair from all aspects. Fair to the companies so they can support the economy, but and then fair to the consumers, fair to the investors, and fair to the American economy. And also, in the end of the day, our industry is capitalized the best in the world, liquidity best in the world, and we have shown the resiliency through last year's crisis or the earlier backs and forth in the world. That shows you that I think we got it pretty much right. So I think the amount of cap we have now is pretty much right. That's been said by every Fed chair. It's not, take my word for it. And rather than why are we messing around? And why are we following countries that are still struggling to figure out the right answer? Just let it go.
Joining us now, we want to bring in Gerard Cassidy. He's RBC Capital Markets Analyst. Gerard, it's great to have you. You just heard the comments from Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America, very much largely echoing some of the commentary that we've gotten from other bank leaders as of late, just in terms of the crackdown that we could have potentially seen, or we could still potentially see here going forward. But that narrative has certainly seemed to shift now with Trump returning to the White House. I'm curious just how looser regulatory measures, what that ultimately means for the banking sector from here on out.
Thank you for having me on the program. And I think Brian said it very well. We've got a very strong capitalistic system here in the United States that the banks are integral to provide the oil and the grease to make the system work. And putting heavy-handed or onerous bank regulations could really slow that down. So now with this election, you've seen where the bank stocks have gone up quite a bit. And it's partly due to the fact that the dialing back of some of the more onerous regulations is likely under the Trump administration, or better yet, it's a softer touch. When you look back to the Trump's first administration and you look at the way they approached regulation, it was a lighter touch than the Biden administration. So we would say that they're not going to see, the change in regulations that are foolish or crazy. As Brian Moynihan said, cooler heads will prevail on the Basel III endgame, and we agree with that. There will be some further changes to that. The capital levels and liquidity levels in the banking system today in the United States are very strong, and there doesn't need to be a significant increase in those levels, which was what Basel III endgame initially called for our biggest banks. So I think what you're going to see, which is what the stocks have reacted to, is a softer touch on regulation in the upcoming administration.
So Gerard, it sounds like you don't think Basel III endgame will be totally thrown out, or do you think it's going to be kind of readjusted under the Trump administration, or do you think we're going to see a completely different set of regulations? How different will it be?
It's a good question, because Basel III endgame, as you know, was introduced in July of 23. And the industry, as well as many constituents, pushed back. And it's been the first time in my career that we've ever seen the Federal Reserve put forth a proposal and completely junk it. And now they have a re-proposal, and we would have thought it would have come out by now. But there's obviously interagency fighting. The FDIC has not signed off on it. We believe that the Fed, who's championing the Basel III endgame, wants all three agencies, the controller of the currency, the FDIC, and the Fed, to sign off on it in unison. And when it does come out, we do expect the big banks to push back again, because from the initial read that Vice Chair Barr gave us in a speech in September, in those some banks, the regional banks in particular, will not see their risk-weighted asset numbers, which is the denominator in the capital equation, go up that much. So I think what you're going to find is that there will be more pushback, and I think the incoming regulators with this administration might look more favorable toward the banks. We're still going to have a Basel III endgame, and the critical part about it, which is what I think everybody wants, particularly the banks, is to have a finalization of this process and be done with it. Lock it down so it cannot be reopened in the future and change the rules again. That's what everybody wants. And I think we're going to get that next year.